Stephen interviews you, discussing topics that matter to you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, smash the like button, and feel free to share it with others so that they can see it too. And if you're new to this channel, please feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can get updates on what I'm doing for this channel. Thank you all so much for your support. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Stephen Interviews You. This is episode number 40. And this is just a podcast where I interview all sorts of people and they tell their own stories about their backgrounds and what they do. And I'm joined by a very special guest.
I'm Tre Stallings, Associate Commissioner for Football at Conference USA. I've been at Conference USA for 6 years and certainly looking forward to this conversation today.
All right. Thank you so much, Tre, for being my special guest on this show. And let's just get right into it. As far as like a backstory goes, what inspired you to get into sports in general? Not just football, but any sports. What really got you going?
I think it more so than anything else is really trying to find my own identity. I would tell you, being a former athlete, a professional athlete, you go through this stage where you're in transition and you're really trying to figure out what you can do next. And I was just put in a position where I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to have an impact on people. So really working in collegiate athletics became an ideal situation based upon my own circumstance. I was really kind of thrown into the fire right when I got done playing with the Baltimore Ravens in 2010, and took on an internship with the Pac-12 conference, and really have never looked back since then. But service more so than anything else, service to the people that I work with, and obviously to our student athletes. That's really what drove me to it.
Yeah. So I read your profile on the Conference USA website, and it said that you played 4 seasons in the NFL. Generally speaking, what was that experience like, just playing in the NFL and getting to know the entire environment surrounding the National Football League?
Yeah, I would tell you it was life changing. So I was drafted in 2006 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Spent 3 seasons with Kansas City, and man, it's ball. And I think the biggest thing I learned though was just the level of sacrifice that it takes in order to be successful. Right, you are truly just trying to figure out, one, how to keep your foot in the door. For me, at least my playing career, I was just trying to find ways to keep my foot in the door. Obviously, trying to be the best that I could be. And then more so than anything else, it was really being around a group of guys that kind of had the same vision, the same purpose, the same drives. That's really what I enjoyed most about it, more so than anything else, was building that camaraderie amongst particular group of offensive linemen, because that's who I spent the majority of my time with. Skill guys kind of did their own thing, and then obviously you had this group of O linemen who were just a cohesive unit. I was really thoroughly impressed by guys like Will Shields, Willie Rofe, Brian Waters. In my opinion, 2 guys that are already in the Hall of Fame, and then Brian Waters, who I think will eventually get in one day. They really led the way. They taught me so much in a very short time frame, in terms of, one, how to be a pro, and then how to be a good dude off the field. I think that old linemen are unique in that people don't think we have a lot of personality based on what we do, which can be very mundane, playing the game at that position. But at the same rate, you really find out that as you play the game, as you have to be this fierce competitor, that a personality comes out that you didn't necessarily see in college. And so there's a maturation process that goes along with that as well. And so for me, it was more so of, hey, how can I be the best dude both on and off the field? Then 2, how can I compete at the highest level to make sure that I stay in this league for as long as possible?
Yeah. So when it comes to working in administrative roles, which is what you would do after your playing days, uh, such as being the assistant director of enforcement for the NCAA and also director of player engagement for the Tennessee Titans, could you take me through both those experiences? What were both those experiences like? Were there any like similarities between those two roles, and what were the differences?
Yeah, so I start with the Titans because that's really where I guess I started there first. The Titans role was it was different because it was more football operations than it was player development. It was really working with our general manager and really figuring out um, a host of things, not just obviously travel, not just who guys are rooming with, but what are we doing on a day to day basis to make sure we're uh, keeping our players at the forefront of all of our conversations. Some of that was quite natural, right? With again personnel changes week in and week out. I think that was probably a very unique thing that would be completely different from the NCAA, is because I was dealing directly with the players every single day, and so with that, you quickly find out that one, you knew certain guys you just wasn't going to be able to build sustaining relationships with because they weren't going to be in the building for a long period of time. They were used and brought in for a specific purpose. Sometimes that was week to week, depending on who our opponent was, who we were playing, and then the other parts of it, there were obviously some veteran guys who had been in the locker room for a very long time, who you knew you were going to have that sustaining relationship with. A lot of those guys I still text and try to keep up with nowadays. And I can remember one guy in particular who we just hit it off. And it's not like you're trying to do that. Obviously, when you are in the front office role with a professional sports league or with a professional sports organization, it's more so of just how things just kind of played out. I mean, I consider myself to be very young when I took that job with the Tennessee Titans. I was still in my mid 30s, still probably in many ways felt like I could still play a little bit, just based on my own work ethic and based on what I was seeing on the field. And so again, creating that barrier was important for me. But again, you have those again. I keep pointing back to relationships. That's really what has driven me to um, be in the positions I've been in. It's just again knowing who I know, and then two, being able to not just know a guy first name, last name, date of birth, where they were from, but really getting to know, hey man, tell me about your family. Who are you as a person through and through? So one that would be the biggest difference. Obviously, direct access to players themselves. Again, college sports is so different than professional sports because everything in professional sports, is particularly in NFL, was driven by the CBA. So again, how we interacted with players, how we interacted with the front office, how we interact with the NFLPA, like all those things were outlined within the CBA. Now, as I transitioned and moved on to the role of the NCAA as the Assistant Director of Enforcement, that was much more of a relationship where I was able to have direct access to head coaches. So I was primarily responsible for Big Ten schools and Sunbelt schools. So I would visit head coaches and their compliance officers, and be able to really talk about trends that we were seeing inside the recruiting space in college athletics. And so that was unique because, again, you hear NCAA or coaches would hear NCAA and they would immediately think of, it was a negative connotation, right? It was like, oh man, he's with the NCAA. I wonder, what he's going to be like. And so trying to break down those barriers, those walls, was easier for me because I played. And so they would see me in person and be like, oh, he played. And so I understood all aspects. And again, that Tennessee Titans job helped me tremendously. Why? Because I got to see a side of sports that most people wouldn't see. Again, you're working with a general manager, you're working with a head coach, you're working with the president of that organization. And so I was able to have conversations with, again, a multitude of people that when I went to a college campus, it was the exact same thing. It's just like you're interacting with the AD, interacting with the president, interacting with that compliance office, and obviously the head coach. That came quite naturally because I wanted to understand more about how coaches were running their programs. And so I found myself again being an advocate more so for the NCAA than I was being a guy that was coming in trying to enforce rules. There really wasn't the purpose of the role. The purpose of the role was to really understand what was happening in the environment, in the recruiting environment, so that we could then be able to have structure and discussions and legislation put in place to kind of help facilitate some of the things and change some of the dynamics that were actually happening.
Yeah. So when it comes to Conference USA, you are now the associate commissioner for Conference USA on the side of football operations. Uh, a part of your job title includes overlooking game operations, player conduct, and safety. Could you describe to me in great detail what are those responsibilities like? What exactly is it that you do when it comes to those things?
I would tell you, Stephen, the biggest piece to that puzzle is officiating.
Okay.
So you talk about operations, right? So we can talk about, coach to player communication that was just implemented a couple of years ago. We could talk about, in-game video that was implemented around the same time as well. But the bulk of my conversations are really centered around officiating when it comes to operations, game day operations, right? It's really primarily the piece that the conference office oversees, right? We oversee the coordinator officials who's hiring and basically managing all of our officials. We also have to be the touch points to our head coach to where if a coach is calling about a call that happened or that occurred over the weekend, like we are the front line to that defense, right? And not necessarily the defense, but we are the front line, really trying to understand what the issues are, what call was made, why it was made. So again, relationships. I would go back to that relationships, making sure that I'm able to call the official or the referee that was at the game, have a conversation with that referee so that he can then have a talk with whoever made the call on the field. And in that way, there can be this conversation. And it won't be a situation where all parties agree because again, much like you're picking your wife or you're picking your date, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. um, it is a dance, but more so than anything else, you're trying to really gain understanding more so than you trying to defend an official. So me personally, um, again, one of the biggest parts, especially during the season, is really managing the officiating piece. But Stephen, I'll tell you, man, like I look at my job description when I started this job 6 years ago, it is vastly different than what it has become today, obviously, because of the changes that we've had in our landscape and what we're having to manage on a day to day basis. And so I've quickly realized that our league is really being managed much more like an NFL organization, or our teams are being managed like that because now you have the general manager that's being a part of the process now. Now, how does the conference office interface with that individual? Because again, rosters are turning over constantly, um, and we need to understand all those dynamics and how they kind of work in our ecosystem. So I know you asked me about operations. I will tell you that we are well beyond operations at this point. But at the same rate, it is a huge chunk of what I do. Obviously, especially during the season, particularly from a game operation standpoint and an officiating standpoint.
Yeah. So a lot of what you just said in your answer to me, that would be a good segue into this next question. I was going to ask it anyway, but what are your thoughts, Trey, on the recent developments in college sports, particularly issues such as NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, which a lot of us on YouTube like to cover, conference realignment, and also stuff like the House settlement, and by extension now the Protect College Sports Act. Um, what are your general thoughts on all that?
Uh, One, let's just start with NIL and the
Okay.
transfer portal. Let's start with those two nuggets. I think that NIL is good for the game of football. One, because it gives some power, some leverage to the player themselves. And I think anytime the individuals who are actually on the field playing, anytime they can have a say in their own futures, I think that's a good thing. I do think that because we've seen varying difference of representatives who are obviously kind of laying out some of these deals that student athletes are signing. I think that's the part that we likely want to, not likely, we need to clean up, in my opinion, um, because you want to protect the student athlete as much as possible, but you also want to make sure that they are equipped to make adult decisions. And I think sometimes that's where um, a lot of mistakes happen, in my opinion, because one, we'll call a student athlete a kid because in many ways when they first get to school they are kids. They are just trying to figure things out. But then on the back end, as you mature and you're in school for 3 to 4 years, now you become an adult. I still, in my opinion, I struggle with that just a little bit. Just my own personal opinion. I struggle with that just a little bit because I don't know that a 21, 22, 23-year old is really an adult. Like I can, and I say that because of the structure, the environment that our student athletes are in. Like most student athletes, not all, most student athletes who are on a college campus, particularly in a G6 conference or in an A4 conference, they have so much structure around them that they are protected in many ways from real life. Why? Because they go to school, they go to class, they go to practice, they play their games, and that's pretty much their entire life for about 4 to 5 years. I never mentioned work, real job, real life experiences. They really never get any of that. At least I know I didn't. So I can, and even with talking to student athletes today, like they don't really have time for anything other than what their sport is. And so again, it's like they're in this cocoon, and we expect for that cocoon to burst, and all of a sudden they are here making again real world decisions that what I would consider grown up. So again, I do think NIL is good for the sport, and I think it's good for college athletics as a whole. I just think there are some nuances that we need to really clean, straighten out, make sure that you know we're in a good spot there. Now, as far as the transfer portal is tricky. Um, and I would say that anytime a student athlete is given the opportunity to leave a school, I don't personally think that student athlete is just ready to make that decision and leave at the drop of a hat. I just don't think that, mainly because a lot of what drive a, a student athlete's decision to choose a particular school is based on their relationship. It's based on a coach. And I think you see probably more movement when a coach leaves than you do when a coach doesn't leave. On the backside of that, here's the part that I don't like, and the part that you read now, especially in media releases. You hear the word a student athlete has been released from their scholarship or they've been cut. That's the part of the transfer portal that I don't like. That's the part of roster management um, that kind of, in my opinion, it scares me a little bit because it can leave a student athlete in a very, very bad situation where, again, they've made a decision. They think this decision is for the next 4 or 5 years of their life. And lo and behold, a new coach in particular, can come in and say, hey, I don't think you're going to fit this roster moving forward. You're likely not going to play here. And then all of a sudden, student athlete has to find a new home. So I think some of those things we need to find ways around. But at any rate, I do think the transfer portal is good. I do think NIL is good, mainly because of the power that it can give to the student athletes themselves.
Yeah. So, uh, by addition, we've heard of developing uh, legal processes such as the Protect College Sports Act. Um, what are you thinking about what's going on with the Protect College Sports Act? Where do you stand with that?
You know, I think that the Protect College Sport Act is a good thing. Like again, we need way more structure than what we have now. I think people operate better when we do have structure. I do think that there has to be some refinement in some of the things that are out there currently. And I think they are working on that as best they can. But at any rate, there are so many voices in college athletics that we tend to be in this position where we're just doing what's best for one league or the next league. I think that we need to find somehow, some way to get back to some cohesion in college athletics. I think that is something that has been missed over the last several years, where we're not just looking out for again one or two particular parties or three or four particular parties, but we're looking out for everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone, not just FBS football or FCS football. We're talking Division 2, Division 3, because it can't just be one sided. It has to be all. And I think that there are varying differences to how we get there. And I think as the gap between like a A4 conference and a G6 conference is widening, we still need to have conversations because again, the ecosystem has functioned for a very long time because of the whole. And so in my opinion, if we can get back to that thinking in some regards, not all regards, because again, there's going to be a lot of dynamics that are just completely different than, well, a lot of dynamics that are completely different from conference to conference. I'll just say that. However, because the whole has operated for a very long time, I just think we need to get back to that place where we're operating that way so there can be some cohesiveness, so there can be some trust that's built in the industry.
Yeah. So going back to a topic that I mentioned not too long ago, a conference realignment. It seems to be a very popular topic among uh, college football YouTubers. From the Conference USA perspective, because you guys at Conference USA, you know what's going on with conference realignment, what might be going on with certain schools. How do you guys in Conference USA, the headquarters there, how do you guys handle situations related to conference realignment if you get word about any school wanting to join Conference USA or vice versa?
Yeah, I would tell you that I'm probably not as equipped to answer that question because I haven't been in those rooms,
Okay.
but I will at least give you my opinion, Stephen. I think that you know, one thing Conference USA has been able to do is we've been able to find schools that can be a really good fit as they make the jump from FCS to FBS. That's what we've been able to do. Identify those institutions and really get those institutions in. They've been able to have success right off the bat. And I think part of that too is again, we've had practice at it one. I think the other part too is, the conversations that we are able to have with those institutions as they prepare to make that jump from FCS to FBS. And then lastly, again, relationships, being able to have real open and honest conversations about what this means and then how can any institution benefit from being in a league like Conference USA. Um, you know, Conference realignment, I will say, is hard. It's hard because it's almost like you're losing a member of your family, to be quite honest with you. Again, in many cases, I remember when we lost the six schools at one time to the American Conference, that was hard, mainly because one, you had so many relationships that you had built with so many different people across those campuses that it was a shock to our system. And so not being able to have in-depth conversations with those individuals about Conference USA. But like all those things are hard. It makes our job a little bit more stressful, to be quite honest with you. But at any rate, conference realignment, as long as we're operating in the structure that we're operating in now, will be at the forefront of any conversation. Mainly because you're going to have schools that either has increased their budget and are looking to continue to, climb the ladder or climb the ranks. And then you also have the situation where there are some schools who feel like they just fit better in a certain region of the country. And so, as long as we have those dynamics, I think you're going to continue to see conference realignment play a huge part in our industry. I look ahead to years like 2031 when, you have new, a CFP deal that'll be up. That's going to be fascinating to kind of see how the CFP impacts decisions like that. And for us, I think we're in a mix now where we have 10 really good schools who will, have been committed to Conference USA. And I think that it's important that we find ways to continue to elevate our brand, elevate our league, and then help them with decisions that they're making on campus that can obviously pay huge dividends on the field of play.
Yeah, I'm I'm always I'm always talking about conference realignment on my channel, and I know of many other YouTubers that talk about conference realignment. It's sometimes it can be a fun topic, other times it can be kind of sketchy at times, but it's it's part of the thing. It's part of the job when you're doing
Yeah.
this. So,
What fascinates you about conference realignment? Just I'm curious.
well, part of it is like the speculation part of it,
Okay.
rumor mill kind of stuff. Uh, no confirmation, no nothing like that. But when you're just getting like, supposed reports about, oh, this school might be joining this conference, the water cooler talk just starts. It just starts from there, and whether it happens or it doesn't, it's just as part of it gets people talking. That's where I
Yeah.
think it just goes. So, moving on to the next question, the CFP, the College Football Playoff. Um, what are your thoughts on this upcoming new deal for the College Football Playoff, which you said would be in the 2030s? As far as like the G6 conferences are concerned, which of course the conferences that we follow, Conference USA and the MAC, uh, should there be, of course, more participation from the G6 conferences for the CFP? And should there be any sort of changes being made to like the format of the CFP?
Yeah. Very very interesting question. So I'm going to shoot you straight. Okay, this is coming from Trey. This is not coming from anybody else, right?
Right.
I think we have to earn our way. The group of six has to earn our way into that playoff. And I think as long as we've shown and demonstrated that we've earned that opportunity, I think we should be in the game. I think that, the metrics are going to play a huge part in how teams are viewed as we continue to move forward. You've seen the CFP obviously come out, indicate that they're using, different metrics than they've used in the past. And as you look at those opportunities, or you look at that data, you also have to look at what's happening in the industry. What's happening in the industry? You have conferences that are moving to 9 conference games. Well, again, that impacts people like us in the group of six because it takes away lesser opportunities for us to play those P4 schools or those autonomy schools. And that in and of itself, we don't know what that dynamic is going to play out to be. And I think we have to wait to see what that's going to be. I think as a group of six, we have to be way more creative in our scheduling tactics. So that's going to be incumbent upon people like myself who manages the conference office schedule, um, to really come up with creative ways so that the metrics don't hinder us. We want it to help us as much as possible in areas where, again, we don't have a lot of control. But in areas where we have control, we better be very strategic on who play who as much as we possibly can, and then seeing if we can't have those out of conference games that can really help support our case, because that's what it boils down to with the CFP is, what is your case, right? If you go 12-0 in the league, what does that mean? If you go 12-0 throughout the season, what does that mean? Like, you hope that that means that you are, again, a higher seed in the CFP and you're not sitting at whatever number we actually get to with the CFP, right?
Right.
um, and so for me, that's what I would like to see. I think a lot of people looked at what happened last year with not Boise State, but with James Madison, and then with Tulane getting in the playoffs again, two Group 6 teams, and they didn't fare as well as we probably would like them to. But again, I think that's a small sample size. I think we need more sample size because we've seen, at least I've seen over the last several years, a couple more upsets when it comes to G6 to A4 play. And I think as we continue to see that, I think those data points will continue to point towards us being a viable option in the CFP and really being able to, compete, sustain. I think if we expand that playoff, if it does go to as many teams as being discussed, I think you'll see some upsets like that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And to your point about scheduling, personally, I welcome it. I would welcome the challenge for my Ohio Bobcats to take on other conferences, that take on other teams from other conferences like Conference USA. Case in point, this year, the Bobcats, we're going to be playing Jacksonville State
Mm-hmm.
week 2, and that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a must watch, in my opinion, to see what happens between those two teams during the game and even after the game, no matter who
Yep.
wins.
Yep.
Because that's like, we're talking about style points. We're talking about, what have you done? What can you do to impress the committee for college football playoff? And so it really does matter. It really does matter when you have games like that. And also, a couple of years ago, after 2024, the season ended. The Cure Bowl that pitted Ohio and Jacksonville State again,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that was between two conference champions
Yep.
facing each other. And I was like, that got me thinking. It was like, could that be like a could that be like a prelude or a precursor, if you will, to something else going to happen between the G6, which that's been part of the talk as well amongst fans, is like, why can't there be some sort of thing among the G6 doing some like postseason thing between themselves and see if we can work something out concerning that.
Yeah.
So
That again, that's an interesting conversation. I think that what ESPN events has been able to do is really try and set up matchups like that during the bowl season. I think that um, if we can get more matchups like that, and then maybe turn it into something like a tournament, then I think there is something there. And just again, to me, it piques fans' interest a little bit more than just going out playing the bowl game. Again, all postseason football, like in 2031 or 2032, it's going to look vastly different than, in my opinion, than what it looks like now. And I think that we need to start at least laying some groundwork on what those potential things can be, so that we're not just sitting there during that year like, oh man, like what's going to happen? Like what are we going to do? So just my opinion.
yeah. And one last thought on this is that I mentioned this to Mid American Conference Commissioner Dr. John Steinbrecher when I interviewed him. Uh, I'd personally like to see at some point down the road maybe like 8 team tournament, be a nice, straightforward thing uh, between champions and at large teams. That would be great, featuring the G6. If we can get to some sort of consensus agreement with that, that'd be great.
Yeah. Again, I think is necessary, right? You let you could potentially let the G6 representatives, depending on how many teams we get into the CFP, let them go in, go and compete, and then you figure out a way to really increase the I would say the notoriety of G6 programs through a tournament style play. Obviously, we'll have to climb some NCAA hoops in order to get that done. But at any rate, I do think there's an appetite out there for something like this. Again, we just need to put our collective brains together and really figure out the structure and the importance of why we need to do it and when we do it.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up this interview with this last question, and this has everything to do with media days.
Mhm.
Uh, I just heard about this past week. I'm not on the up and up about media days. I'm being honest with you, Trey.
Yeah.
But when it comes to media days, Conference USA, they're going to have their media days. What do you guys have planned in general for this year's media days, which is going to happen in July sometime?
Yeah, so our media days is July 20th through 21st. That's a Monday and Tuesday. We're having in Arlington and Texas Live. And I'll tell you, for us regarding media day, it's not just about our student athletes coming in or our coaches coming in being in front of media. We actually have programs set up or programming set up for our student athletes when they come in. So Sunday, we'll have a special guest, a speaker that'll speak to our student athletes, along with a talk from our commissioner on hot topics that are occurring in the space. And then on Monday, we'll have the situation where we have some financial literacy, where we have again a partner that'll come in, talk to our student athletes about again what they're experiencing in the space with NIL. How can they better manage their money? How can they set up a plan for their money? So on and so forth. We'll have leadership programming as well, again from a special guest, a partner within the industry that'll come in. They'll do their part, and then we also have a what's the last part? I'm missing it. Branding. We also have a branding partner that's coming in and speaking to our student athletes. So again, while we're doing some portions of our media day event on Monday at Texas Live, there'll also be programming that's occurring at the same time to ensure that again they're getting more than just again getting in front of media, you know, talking to media about what they anticipate for the upcoming season. They actually get some stuff that they can hopefully be able to take back to campus, share with their teammates, and then we'll be able to really make this a lifelong learning event more than it is just an event that they'll, kind of check off their list as a college student athlete.
Yeah. So I'm going to be looking forward to all these media days for all these conferences, uh, as will all other college football fans. So, Trey Stallings, thank you so much for being my special guest on this show. Thank you so much for discussing topics that matter to you. And thank you guys for watching. This has been episode 40 of Stephen Interviews You. We'll be back again with another interview. Take care, guys.